Welcome, my constant reader friends. I'm Tad, and this is Tad Reads Books and Stuff. So today, let me start off by getting out of the way what I'm currently reading. So, as you all know, I am reading George R.R. Martin, Fire and Blood, in preparation of the new TV series that's coming out shortly. So this basically is a history of the Targaryen family before Game of Thrones. So I'm doing pretty good. I only have about 150 pages left. As soon as I get done reading that, which will be early next week, we'll be stepping into Philip K. Dick, The Cosmic Puppets. And I am also still reading The Expanse, the first novel, Leviathan Wakes. And with this one as well, I'm on page 400. So I've got about 150 pages left of this. Once I finish that, we'll be going to Memories Legion. This is a compilation of short stories, and I will be reading Drive, which is the short story that coincides with the time period that Leviathan Wakes takes place. So that will be the rest of this month. All right, so for this video, get that out of the way. What I'm doing is, I don't know if any of you have been watching for a while, I did do my top 10 classic fantasy novels of all time. That was basically anything that was published from the 70s back. I gave my top 10 individual books. Some of them, of course, were part of a series, some were not. So I did that video. Then I did another video in this kind of series that was my top 10 fantasy, more modern novels. So those are published from the 80s to the present. And again, some of those are in a series, some of them weren't, but I did that video. So this is the next evolution in that series. And this is my top 10 fantasy series of all time. And that's all time, so that could be published anytime. But I do have some rules for it. I'm not going to list the same author more than once. If I did, I'd have 3 or 4 series by Tad Williams. I'd have 2 or 3 by Terry Brooks. So I'd only have a couple series in here. So they have to be a series by a different author. 2, they have to actually be series that I've read the whole series. Now, some of these have actually become like multiple series. You might have a trilogy and then a quadrilogy, or or a book here or there. These are the original series, maybe that started, or they could be in the middle of a longer one. So it's not going to be like The Expanse, which has 9 books in the series, or even Robert Jordan, The Wheel of Time. I've only read 3 of those books. There's 14 or whatever in the series, so that can't be on the list. See what I'm saying? So even though there could be, like for instance, Terry Brooks, that has the Shannara series, there's like over 42 books in that series. I'm just going to do my favorite individual series in that. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it'll make sense as we get going, especially even like graphic novels too. There's several authors that I really love that may have some great series of graphic novels, but I'm just going to do one. And then of course there's graphic novels that are just, the series have been kind of going on forever. So anyways, let's start with number 10. I did take some notes, so forgive me if I'm reading off some of my notes that I took. Really, the purpose of doing this is because there are certain things I really want to make sure that I hit on. And as you know, I can start rambling and talking forever, and this video would take forever. So I tried to take some notes so that it'll keep me at least a little faster. And then some of them that are really super obvious, that everyone knows, I'm probably not going to discuss much. So anyways, number 10, let's start with number 10. And I don't know that I've seen this series on anybody's list. This was a coworker that knew that I was a big reader, knew that I liked fantasy, and said, "Have you ever heard of this author?" And I said, "No, I've never even heard of that author." And they said, "Oh, you've got to read this trilogy." And I said, I'm thinking, man, if I haven't even heard of them, how good can it be? Well, she gave me the trilogy. I started reading it, and it instantly captivated me. The writing was great. Let me just show it to you. I'm going to set this down. So I have the three here. This is, it's called The Black Magician's Trilogy, and it's by Trudy Canavan. And of course, it's got 3 books in the trilogy. The Magician's Guild is book number 1. The Novice is book number 2. And then book number 3 is The High Lord. I'm not going to show every book in all these series. I just wanted to show you those real quick. Those are the American edition. Let me just read a little bit that I wrote down about this. So it's called The Black Magician's Trilogy. It's by Trudy Canavan. The first original book in this series was published in Australia. That's where she's from, in October of 2001. And of course, it includes 3 books. Now, she's won a lot of awards, especially in Australia, for her fantasy novels. She has several different series. But this one, let me talk to you about it a little bit. Really, basically what it is a magician's guild. There's a magician's guild in this world. And to be a member of the magician's guild, of course, you have to know magic. You have to demonstrate that your ability to do the magic. And you actually have to go through training to be a member of this guild. Now, this guild isn't really the favorite thing going on in this world. A lot of these people really despise some of these magicians because of their power and the things that they can do, and because this guild kind of has control politically, socially, financially in the world, and people despise them, really. And this story is about, this follows this girl named Sonia, and she's a young girl, but she finds that she has these magical abilities similar to these magicians in this magician's guild. And since they are such hated people in this universe, she doesn't want to be found out, because she will be forced to go into a school, a training for these magicians. She'll be forced to be in this guild. Otherwise, who knows what might happen to her. So she goes into the underground and tries to get people to try to help her, not be discovered by this guild of magicians. However, these people know that she has magical abilities, so they start using her, kind of like a mafia, making her do things for them. It goes from there. We could talk about this forever. It was awesome. There's intrigue in this. There's deceit. There's cool locations, catacombs and castles, and it was so well written that it was very visual for me. I'm a very visual reader, and that's why I loved it so much. And the writing style, the plot, it wasn't too fast, it wasn't too slow, there wasn't too much fighting. There was explanation of the magic systems. As she goes through, she eventually has to join the guild, going through training, finds out some other, things that are going on, some intrigue in this world. Really good. I'm just going to stop here. I'm going to just advise you to, if you have not read any Trudy Canavan, search her out. Again, she has several series. Really good writer, really good story. This was actually her first trilogy that she did. So, number 10 on my list. All right, let's move on. Number 9. I didn't know if this was going to make the list. It actually pushed out another one. But here it is. Yes, The Faithful and the Fallen. John Gwynne. You all know I just finished this, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it because you can look back. I've got a couple reviews on this. What do they call it? What do they call it? 4 books? Jeez, quadrology or something. I don't know. But this is the first one in this world, and there's so much that I loved about this series. There's so much I liked about this series. But if you watch my videos, you will see that there's a lot that I don't like about this series. That's why it's so high. I am seeing people put this like #1 in their top 10 fantasy series of all time. Not for me, not yet. Although, as I sit on it and I ruminate about it, it is growing. It is a great, it's epic. I loved it. It was good. Animal, companions, giants, everybody. Just, you can look at my other videos. I'm not going to wait too long on this. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this one. All right, so that was number 9. Just so you know, it was first published in December of 2012. And of course, there's 4 books: Malice, Valor, Ruin, and Wrath. And I just finished it. So it actually is making it into my top 10. All right, next one. Number 8. Some people hate this. I don't know why. I loved it. And you saw it maybe in my other video. And that's Jean M. Auel's the Clan of the Cave Bear. This series is called Earth's Children. It was originally published in May of 1980. When I read this book, so we're talking 1980. I hadn't even graduated high school yet. My father had just passed away recently. This book was on my mother's bookshelf, and I grabbed it and I started reading it. It was intriguing to me because I did know that it was prehistoric times. So I started reading it. Jean Auel, I think, is amazing. I've done some research on her, or I did some back in the past. She slept in ice caves and other caves. She learned how to do authentic cave paintings. She learned how to start fire using, prehistoric methods. She lived in this life. She lived in the field. She did a ton of research, and I loved it. I love the prehistoric time. I love anything history anyways, but just this book, and she was really one of the first ones to actually do this kind of time period, this ancient, history type of fantasy novel. Some people put her down for it, though, because she uses modern language, and they're like, well, those people wouldn't use modern language. No, they had grunts and groans. The book would be, I'm making a joke. But anyways, this is about Ayla. Some people of you have seen maybe the movie. But in this series, it starts with Ayla as a very young girl, and she becomes an orphan because of a natural disaster. Like, I believe it's an earthquake. It's been a long time. Her whole village disappears. She somehow lives. She gets attacked by a mountain lion. But anyways, she gets found she's a Cro-Magnon. She gets found by a clan of Neanderthals. They take her in. She's blonde hair, blue eyes, stands really tall, straight, light skin. They're, of course, Neanderthals. They're more hair covered, hunched over, big eyebrow, bones, things like that. So they are different species, and they can't really use language. They use hand signals. They find out she can talk and make noises out of her mouth. It's really cool. Yes, there are some problems with info dumping, with a lot of this history that Jean knows about. I think, and this really is her first novel. She does a lot of info dumping, even throughout the whole series. The series does include now 6 novels. The first one, Clan of the Cave Bear. The second one, Valley of Horses, I really loved. Mammoth Hunters, I really loved. Then you get into the Plains of Passage, the Shelters of Stone, and the Land of Painted Caves. The last 3 books are where, for me, they start dropping off a little bit. 3 are by far my favorites, but it does start getting in more kind of like a romance for me, but still very interesting. Again, another writer that was so visual. I had dreams about this book. If I dream about a book, it's going to be on my list of one of the best. So this book is on the top of one of my top 10 favorite books of all time, but the series is probably 8th right now, sitting at 8. It could go lower. There's some other ones coming on, but Clan of the Cave Bears, I hope if you haven't read it, you all give it a try. It is awesome. All right, so that was number 8. Now number 7, some people are going to think because of my channel that this would be higher on my list, but it just isn't for many reasons, but it's still on my list. And that is, yes, Stephen King, Dark Tower series. I'm not going to say a lot about it. So the actual book came out in 1982, not this version, of course, and boy, I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. I had read about it. I couldn't find it for years. It was difficult, but then, of course, it took off. So everyone knows about Roland Deschaines and the Black Man and Jake and his quartet and all that, and how this book is relevant to, you know, the Stephen King multiverse and things like that. So there are actually 8 books in the series, and then of course multiple references and other short stories in this Dark Tower series. I loved it. You know, recently, you can watch some of my other videos, I was reading through some of the graphic novels, and it reminded me just how much I really love this series. For me, it started, this book is, a lot of people find it difficult to read this book and follow it. But as you go on, it gets better and better until towards the end, I think it gets worse and worse. It just becomes very bloated. You know, there are problems with every series, every writer. But this, for me, is number 7 on my list of the top 10. All right, Stephen King. Next, we're down to number 6. Now, first, before we continue, I do want to say that I read mostly, the great majority of my books are fantasy. I do read a lot of science fiction, horror, and a lot of historical novels, history novels. But why you're not seeing, for instance, The Wheel of Time is over here. It's not on my list. I've only read 3 of the novels. And I'll be honest with you, the first one I didn't like that much. Second one I liked a little bit more. The third one a little bit more. People are telling me by the 4th one it really starts, or the 5th one it really starts getting good right now. But I haven't read them all. So, and I've got tons of fantasy series out there that I just have not read. That's why they're not on my list. I haven't finished them. For some reason, I read 1 or 2 and then I put them down, and I haven't been able to get back to them. So that's why I'm there. All right, number 6. Man, I love this. This is one of my top 10 novels of all time. This is Robert Silverberg, Lord Valentine's Castle. Man, this is good. I love this. Again, another one that's in my top 10 because of how visual of a writer Robert Silverberg can be. He also, though, in other books, I've read several other books, he can be kind of pedantic. Sometimes he does, I think, prefer, from what I've read, mostly science fiction novels. This has got some kind of science fiction-y parts in it, but it really is a fantasy novel. Now, this is part of, they call it the Lord Valentine cycle. And the Lord Valentine cycle only has 3 books. So it's got Lord Valentine's Castle, it's got, Madripoor Chronicles, and Valentine Pontifex. But then there's another series that is called Lord Pristimian Cycle, which is in this world, Madripoor world. And there's another one called Tales of Madripoor, which is it's a compilation of 7 novellas in this world. There's also the Mountains of Madripoor, which is kind of a standalone story in this world. So it's a huge world, and in this world, dreams control the mind oftentimes. There's a dream king who lives in this weird place. I think I've talked about this before. You got to read it. Lord Valentine, he basically is the Lord of Madripoor, and he wakes up one day and he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't remember his name. He doesn't know where he is, what he's doing there. He goes and he finds like a little river and looks at his reflection. He doesn't recognize the person that he's looking at. And eventually he joins up with this traveling circus. And he becomes one of the group of jugglers. And they travel through the land. And as he travels, he starts to remember more. He starts having these dreams and dreaming more. His mother is a big deal. She contacts him through the dreams. But Lord Valentine is sitting at Lord Valentine's castle running the country. What happened? Well, there are some nefarious people who took his essence, put it in another body, replaced one of their people in his Lord Valentine's body, and has now usurped the kingdom. And you got to read it. It's great. Again, there's a trilogy to this, and one of my all-time favorites. Again, another book I had dreams about when I was reading. All right, that's number 6. Now we're going to the top 5. I know this video's getting long. Top 5. It's got to be. This is my only graphic novel. I'm just using this as a placeholder. I do have the individual graphic novels and other books. This is a nice one. This just has the artwork and stuff and talks about the world. Of course, it's Watchmen by Alan Moore and art by Dave Gibbons. Man, I love this. It's got to be, for me anyways, it's the greatest graphic novel of all time. Now, you know I love Alan Moore. There could be tons of these in here. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen could be in here. I just haven't read them all. Promethea could be in here, right? You know, I was trying to read From Hell and I couldn't do it. V for Vendetta, I just could go on and on with Alan Moore's graphic novels. Miracle Man, definitely one of my favorite series of all time. But Watchmen has got to be the best. It's number 5. Basically, it's an alternate history with superheroes. But the superheroes really are just human beings. Well, I mean, some can be very strong. One of the guys, I'm not going to give up the whole story away if you're not familiar with it. Ozymandias is basically the smartest man on Earth. There is one, though, Mr. Manhattan. You see him right here. He gets caught in some type of nuclear reactor fusion thing, and it changes his atoms and chemicals, and he actually is a superhero. This guy can do things. He can make multiples of himself. He lives on Mars. He just couldn't live on Earth anymore, so he goes to Mars, but he could destroy the world through nuclear fusion, nuclear blast, and that may be what happens. So these superheroes have to come out of retirement and try to save the world. There's intrigue in it, and there's a reason. You could see what happens in here, but anyways, wow, man, an alternate Earth, history, historical references, but different things may have been out. There's a movie. The movie isn't the best, but the movie, I think, did a good job with it. There's some other stuff. I don't know what to say about this. If you haven't read Watchmen, get Alan Moore's Watchmen. Read it. It's amazing. All right, that stack's getting precarious there. All right, number 5. Get out of the way. Down to the bottom 4. Some people might think this should be higher. It probably is on a lot of people's lists. It's number 4 on mine, and that is, of course, J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter. Again, 7 books, but now you've got, you know, there's short stories, Beetle Bard, things like that. There's also now the new movies coming out, the Grindelwald movies and books. Loved it. I don't have to talk about it that much. This is my copy, is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Unfortunately, it's not a first, it's a first fifth. So it's not worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have seen it online for $1,000. I don't even think it's worth that much. But yeah, I do have the Philosopher's Stone version of it. But I love the series. We're not going to get into it. It was originally published in 1997. All right. Number 4. That was number 4. Number 3. Now, these last 3 really could be interchangeable. And, of course, you're all going to, you know, put them in different orders. For me, this is my order. Number 3. Oh! J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. Now, I would say that The Hobbit is my favorite book. You might join Hobbit in with this series or not. This is a trilogy. You might put Silmarillion, but there's so many different novels now and stories that you could put in with this series. But you know what I'm talking about. It's J.R.R. Tolkien. Lord of the Rings is number 3. First published in 1954. Now, he was writing this series from like between 1937 and let me look at my notes, 49. And then he was trying to get this published. He had some issues getting it published. It finally was published in 1954 originally. So I'm not even going to stack that up there. I'm going to start a new stack right here. But for all the reasons that everybody knows why Lord of the Rings is so good, why it's number 3 though and not 2 or 1 for me, is really just some of it's kind of difficult to read. It is. Some of the language is difficult. The poems and songs and stuff seem to go on forever sometimes. So I can see where some people have difficulty reading this. But yeah, number 3 all time on my list. All right, let's go on to number 2. If you've been watching my channel, you probably know what these 2 are. They're definitely interchangeable, but I'm going to give one a little bit more of an edge to the other one. So number 2, yep, Tad Williams, Dragonbone Chair. So this is called The Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy. Everybody makes fun that Tad Williams writes trilogies that are 4 books. This originally was only 3 books, but the 3rd one was so large that they have divided it now into 4 books. This first was published in October of 1988. It's the world of Austin Ard. There's Sailman or Simon, Benedict, Prince Joshua. I could go on and on. Hundreds of characters, but he really knows how to do it a little bit better, of course, than John Gwynne, in my opinion. Also, multiple storylines. He brings them all together to a climax at the end that is satisfying. He nails it. There's 3 books in the original trilogy: The Dragonbone Chair, Stone of Farewell, and To Green Angel Tower. Now, he's gone on now. There's a new trilogy that he's been working on, which of course is going to be 4 books. I'm going to show you, I finally got the 3rd book. I'm going to show you that in another video. We'll talk about that. He also has a couple of short, novellas that help inform the history of this world. There are some short stories too and other compilations that he has. But you can look at my other videos about this series, so I'm not going to stay on this too long. But his writing, I mean, everybody, George R.R. Martin has talked about his writing. Other fantasy authors have talked about Tad Williams and his inspiration for them to write fantasy. If you have not read Tad Williams, holy crap, you gotta read Tad Williams. All right, enough said. Number 2 on my list. And number 1, y'all are gonna know. All right, let me see. So, yes, Terry Brooks and Shannara. Sword of Shannara, first novel that he wrote. The first trilogy, I'm going to say, is my favorite fantasy series of all time. Yes, is it reminiscent of Lord of the Rings? This first book, yes, it wasn't completely his fault. Lesser Del Rey made him do it that way because he wanted these epic fantasies to start being more well read. Everyone knew J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, but any other writings were kind of difficult. I mean, we've got Elric sagas and other things like that, but this one was the next big thing, and it has informed so many other writers too. This originally was published in 1977. The original trilogy, of course, is The Sword of Shannara, The Elfstones of, or Shannara, he says. I met Terry Brooks. He says Shannara. A lot of people say Shannara. He says Shannara, so I should say Shannara. I guess The Sword of Shannara. The second one, of course, is The Elfstones of Shannara. And the third one is The Wish Songs of Shannara. Of course, the original trilogy really revolves around the good and bad, of course. So you have the Warlock Lord, and he's been banished to a horrible world, but he's trying to come back into the world and take over the world with his demons. You've got elves and the Elcris tree, and they're trying to keep him out. There's, of course, Alanon. Everybody says is just a copy of Gandalf, but really he's more like was copied after Merlin, who, of course, probably Gandalf was copied after. Who knows? But there's also these little people, not dwarves. There are dwarves. These are more like Hobbit people, I guess. That's the Olmsford family, and they actually have elven blood in their family. So anyways, it's a epic battle of good and evil. It's awesome. The first trilogy was really good, and then he just goes on from there. In this series now, they're saying, geez, I've got them all. There's over 42 books, short stories, and graphic novels in the Shannara world. There are some that people don't think belong with the Shannara world, like Running with the Demon, that trilogy. I think it is. That's Earth, and as people will learn, I shouldn't give it away, but it's basically Earth in the future, but now it's reverted back to, there's reasons because of nuclear, why we have these different type of civilizations, the gnomes, the dwarves, the humans, the elves. But anyways, it is really a future of Earth is this series. If you read the whole thing. But anyways, yeah, totally my favorite of all time. I've read them all. If it was up to me, I'd put Terry Brooks' Magic Kingdom for Sale Sold series in there. He's got another series he just started. Same with Tad Williams. He's got 3-4 other fantasy type series that I would put up there. But that's it. I'd like to hear what maybe you agree with or don't agree with, or what your maybe top 10 fantasy series of all time are. It's going to change because I will start finishing some of these other series that I've never finished before. And so this is going to be a top 10 in transition, I guess we'll call it. But anyways, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching my channel. Please subscribe if you find anything worth any type of value, entertainment value for you. Please, I like if you would like my videos, but really I love seeing the comments. I'm getting more and more. It's awesome. I really enjoy it. But thank you so much. I hope you all have a good day. Peace out.